In 2022, someone threw a hand grenade into an apartment building in Stockholm. Consider that sentence carefully. Not in Kabul, not in Mogadishu, not in a trench in eastern Ukraine. In Stockholm, the capital of the country that the world's liberal elite once considered the ultimate template for the safest, most progressive society in Europe. That same year, Sweden, a nation of only 10 million people, recorded over 60 fatal shootings. Let that number hang in the air. Drive-by attacks in broad daylight in peaceful suburban squares, car bombs detonating in residential neighborhoods where families were sleeping, execution-style killings occurring outside crowded shopping centers where children were buying ice cream. And then there are the bombings. Not one isolated incident, not 10 rare occurrences. Sweden averaged more than one bombing per week between 2018 and 2023. More than one explosion every 7 days in a Nordic welfare state. For a country of this size, these metrics are not just high. They are a statistical anomaly that defies the laws of Western European sociology. Sweden now holds the second highest rate of gun violence deaths in Europe, surpassed only by Albania, a country with a vastly different economic and political history. Stockholm's per capita gun murder rate is now 30 times higher than London's. 30 times. A Nordic capital built on the promise of social democracy, safety, and absolute order has become objectively more dangerous than the most troubled districts of London when it comes to the barrel of a gun. This is not a tabloid story. This is not a partisan talking point. This is a forensic autopsy of a system that produced the exact opposite of its intended design. To understand the mechanics of this collapse, we must analyze the Swedish model not as a political ideal, but as an engineering project. After 1945, Sweden constructed a high-trust equilibrium. It was a closed-loop system where social welfare and individual responsibility were perfectly balanced. The architecture of this system relied on one critical, unspoken variable: homogeneity. Not just ethnic homogeneity, but a homogeneity of norms, values, and expectations. When the population is small and shares the same social code, the cost of policing is low. You don't need a high officer per capita ratio when the citizens police themselves through social pressure and consensus. This was the foundation of the Swedish utopia. Swedes left their bicycles unchained and their doors unlocked because the system wasn't just a set of laws, it was a collective agreement. Beginning in the 1970s, Sweden made a strategic choice to transition into a humanitarian superpower. Compassion was integrated into the national identity as a core metric of state success. But as the immigration waves scaled, from the Balkan Wars of the 90s to the Middle Eastern conflicts of the 2000s, the system's ability to maintain its high-trust equilibrium began to fracture. The state's solution was the Million Program, the construction of massive, high-density housing blocks on the urban periphery. Places like Rinkeby, Tensta, and Rosengård. These weren't designed to be ghettos. They were modern, clean, and efficient, but they became the incubation chambers for socio-economic decoupling. In 2015, the system reached its terminal stress point. Sweden absorbed 163,000 asylum seekers in a single year. In a country of 10 million, that is the demographic equivalent of the United States absorbing 5 million people in 12 months. The administrative infrastructure disintegrated overnight. Processing times for asylum applications stretched from months to years. While the newcomers waited in these peripheral housing blocks, they weren't integrating into Sweden. They were integrating into a vacuum. The labor market, protected by powerful unions and requiring high-level linguistic skills, offered no entry points. The education system, designed for high-performing native speakers, couldn't bridge the gap. What emerged was not a multicultural society, but a parallel one. In this parallel world, the state began to lose its monopoly on authority. When formal systems, like the job market or the legal system, fail to provide status and security, informal systems fill the void. This brings us to the rise of the criminal clans and gangs. These are not disorganized street crews. They are highly efficient, hierarchical organizations that operate with a level of brutality Swedish society was entirely unprepared for. They recognized that Sweden's low-intensity policing was an exploitable resource. They didn't just sell drugs, they established local sovereignty. They began to mediate disputes, enforce their own laws, and tax local businesses. The drug trade in Sweden has evolved into a multi-billion euro industry that plugs the country directly into the global narcotics chain. Cocaine processed in South America and shipped via the ports of Antwerp and Rotterdam is funneled through the Öresund Bridge into the Swedish suburbs. The profits are so massive that they have corrupted parts of the local administration and reached into the Swedish banking system through complex money laundering schemes. Competition for this market is what drives the violence. When a territory is worth millions of euros a month, a hand grenade is simply a tool of market adjustment. The hand grenades themselves tell a chilling story of logistical efficiency. Most are M75 or M52 models, surplus weapons from the Yugoslav wars that have sat in bunkers for 30 years. They are smuggled into Sweden hidden in legitimate cargo or passenger vehicles. In the vulnerable areas of Stockholm and Malmö, these grenades can be purchased for as little as $100. They provide high-impact terror with low technical requirements. They are used to send messages to rivals, to intimidate business owners, and to ensure that witnesses remain silent. The forensic evidence at these blast sites is often minimal, making prosecution extremely difficult. The Swedish police force is currently in a state of mathematical paralysis. With only 209 officers per 100,000 inhabitants, one of the lowest ratios in the European Union, they are simply outnumbered. When 60 different neighborhoods are classified as vulnerable areas where the state's reach is limited, the math of order fails. The police can enter these areas, but they cannot occupy them or provide permanent security for the residents. This creates a witness trauma. In a high-trust society, you talk to the police because you believe the state will protect you. In a parallel society, you stay quiet because you know the gang will still be there when the police car leaves. The political shift in Sweden is the direct consequence of this clinical reality. The government's decision to involve the military and domestic policing, a move that would have been seen as an authoritarian nightmare 5 years ago, is now viewed by many as a necessary survival tactic. It is an admission that the civilian administrative state can no longer manage the variables it introduced. The Sweden Democrats haven't just grown because of populism. They have grown because they were the only political entity whose rhetoric matched the empirical experience of the people living in the suburbs. The geopolitical implications are also clear. Sweden's rush to join NATO and its hardening border policies aren't just about Russia. They are about internal stability. A nation whose capital is rocked by weekly bombings cannot effectively project power or maintain economic confidence. Other European nations, from Germany to France, are watching Sweden not as a model to emulate, but as a cautionary tale of what happens when the logistics of integration are ignored in favor of the aesthetics of humanitarianism. Closing the borders may slow the rate of change, but it does not address the 2 million people already inside the parallel society. The second and third generations, young men born in Sweden with Swedish passports but zero buy-in to the Swedish social contract, are the primary drivers of the gang violence. Rebuilding trust in these communities requires more than just investment. It requires a fundamental restructuring of the state's relationship with its citizens. It requires reclaiming the monopoly on violence and rebuilding a labor market that actually has entry points for outsiders. The safe Nordic capital of the past is gone. It has been replaced by a nation in a state of permanent, low-level internal conflict. The hand grenade in the Stockholm apartment building wasn't an anomaly. It was the predictable outcome of a system that over-engineered compassion and under-engineered security. It is the terminal stress test of a society that forgot that trust is not a natural resource. It is something that must be built, defended, and maintained through the strict application of the rule of law. Logistics secure the future. Mathematics secure the power. Analysis terminated.